So the next piece we're going to look at is, when do you start? When do you start outdoors? What time of year are you going to start? Are you going to start, it's 70 degrees and it's March 1st? What are you going to do? So these are planting dates across the state of Nebraska. Most planting dates in the southeast corner are going to start approximately mid April to late April, so April 21st ish. And it's going to move across the state later and later till about May 21st when you get to the upper northwest corner of the state. We always have to be very careful. We do a lot of times every year we warm up and then we get a late freeze. So don't be in too big of a hurry to start cleaning up some of that landscape debris that's fallen all over your landscape and your herbaceous plants, and don't be too early or too excited about getting annuals out in your landscape, because a lot of times we'll have a late freeze. Here in the Lincoln area, we've seen some late freezes of at least 32 degrees, as late as May. So really don't be too excited, especially for those warm season annual plants. You can get an early freeze in the fall. Sometimes our growing season ends a little bit early. Our normal end of the growing season is about the 10th of October, but we have seen some as early as, 1st of October. So here's some easy ways to protect your plants if you do know from the weather guy on TV or gal on TV that it's going to be cold and it's going to frost. So make sure that you choose cold hardy plants that will survive for whatever time of year you're putting them out. Place those plants in frost resistant spots, so places where they kind of have something overhanging so that they're not in low areas where the frost will or the cold air will fall and frost will linger. Harden off those seedlings. So some of those plants will survive some of those light frosts, like we talked about those pansies. They will survive a little bit of light frost. They will also survive a little bit of snow. I've had some sit in snow for a day or so. A lot of the those spring blooming bulbs that we have, a lot of people get worried when they see them coming out of the ground early. If we have a warm up in early March, those know what they need to do. So a lot of times, if it's just the leaves, they'll survive, a few nights of cold frost. They'll survive some snow. If you need to, you can go out and cover those plants before nightfall. You can don't cover them with plastic, but if you have some old sheets or pillowcases or some row cover, those are really good to choose to help protect and keep that warmth in there. You can cover them with some cloches. You can buy some kind of bulb-like things that you can just set on top of it. You can use milk jugs also. You can warm the plants with some water. A lot of people use those walls of water. The water warms up by the sun during the day. And the way water works, it will release that heat over at night. If you water right before a frost, that helps. The water freezing actually releases heat, so that actually helps keep some frost away. When there's cold in some orchards and stuff, especially down south, they'll actually turn their irrigation systems on to help protect their plants. Bring them indoors. Just pull them inside the garage, and then also you can wrap the fruit trees to protect the branches or the trunks. So we've kind of talked about some watering throughout this, but make sure that you are not watering overhead if possible. If you do have to water overhead as early in the day as you can, so that it has all day for those that water to dry on those plants, and those plants are not going into the evening wet. Water from the base, getting that water into that soil profile and getting it down as deep into that soil profile is the best thing that you can do. It actually helps send the roots down further, so that if you do come into a drought area or drought time, those roots are further down into that soil profile, and you don't need to worry about it quite as much. And again, water early in the morning. You can reduce watering by adding mulch to conserve that water. Mulch can be found in many different forms. You can use old leaves, you can use straw, you can use hay, you can use wood mulch. All of those work very well for conserving that water. Again, make sure you have your soil moist before you add that, because a lot of times it's very hard to get that water back down into that soil and get that soil wet if it has to go through all of that mulch. So weeds. Definitely need to control them. They will compete for nutrients and water with the plants that you want there. So you want to get them out of there so that they are not competing. Cultivation, mulching will help. A lot of weed seeds need light to germinate. If you have them underneath mulch, they will not be germinating. If you actually plant close together, that actually shades stuff out also. That will keep that light out. You can use herbicides if need be. You can hoe. And one of the other things for mulching is not just organic mulches, but you could actually use live mulches. So you can actually find plants that will actually act as a mulch within your landscape. So winter in the garden, to clean up or not to clean up, that is always the question. A lot of people like to leave their landscapes stand. A lot of the plants give really good winter interest. Some don't. So that's kind of the decision that you want to decide to do. Does it look nice? Does it not look nice? There are some beneficial insects that winter over in some of that debris also. So that's also another factor to decide when you're cleaning up your landscape in the fall for your winter garden. But there are also some insects that harbor within that debris that are not good insects. So again, if you knew that you had an infestation of something that you don't want back again next year, that might be something that you think about and removing that plant residue. You can protect the soil within your garden for the winter, adding some cover crops, especially if you are working in an annual bed where you are removing all of that dead material, and you're going to start again from scratch, either it be annual flowers or a vegetable garden. That helps protect the soil. It helps hold the soil. It will help add organic matter. Winter wheat, clover, oats, barley, those are all ones that you can find. A lot of people will just use a mix, lots of mixes that you can purchase either online or in. More and more seeing them in nurseries and box stores. So we've talked IPM throughout Master Gardener training. Here are a handful of IPM strategies that you really kind of need to keep in the back of your mind within your herbaceous landscape beds. You want to encourage strong, vigorous plant growth. Really remember the correct planting dates. Remember the frost times if they're annuals. Water them correctly, fertilize them correctly if need be. But if you give the plant good soil to grow in and you take care of that plant, pretty much takes care of it for you. So you don't need to worry about too much if you are giving it what it needs. Make sure that you preserve those predatory insects, those lady beetles, those praying mantids. They are your friends. So make sure that you know what they look like, know what those egg cases look like. Lady beetles, when they're in their immature stage, do not look like lady beetles. So know what they look like so you're not getting rid of them. Go out and scout regularly for damage. Go out and see where those critters are living. Go out and see where those bunnies are eating. If you have squirrels, make sure that you are getting rid of them. Identify those pests and those problems as soon as possible, but make sure that you know what that pest is. Don't be, spraying a fungicide on something that is an insect problem. You can protect those plants with row covers, with cloches, protect them from the late frost or early frost like we had talked about. Sometimes, if you want to get rid of either a disease or an insect that you don't want, a spray of strong water from your hose is all you need. You can, if you do need to move into some kind of a chemical control, use the least toxic product you possibly can. If you are looking at caterpillars, BT is something that you can think of. It won't harm anything else. Insecticidal soaps, neem oil, those are things that you can do. Move then into the pyrethrums or other chemicals where you need to get rid of something. Chemical application, when you're looking at especially a liquid application, make sure that you're covering both the top and the bottom of that leaf surface. Those little critters can move pretty quick and they can hide underneath on the bottom of those leaves and then come right back out, and then all of your time and effort was for naught. I'll reapply as that label says. Remember when we talked, the label is the law, so you need to follow it. And then remove very heavily infested plants, both, in the summertime, if it's just something that it's just, you're done with it and it's just not going to be able to work anymore. Especially when we're talking about vegetables, a lot of times when you get squash vine borer or squash bugs, sometimes it's just better not to fight it anymore. Remove it. Do not compost it. Put it into your garbage receptacle and just get those completely out of your garden. So here's just kind of a timeline, or follow the line, follow the rules, identify the problem, know what it is, analyze that problem, develop and evaluate what the solutions are to solve that problem, and then what is the best solution for your landscape and how you want to decide to do that. And then convert those decisions into actions, and then follow up any action if it needs to be repeated. So just, again, some more general guidelines for chemical insect control. Use the least toxic product that will give you good control. So learn what those products are and understand what they will do to the insects within your landscape. And then make sure that you thoroughly cover that plant with the insecticide. It's very essential. You can also use agents that are called wetting agents. They're kind of a piece that goes into it to help kind of make that liquid, that chemical stick to the plants. Sometimes people call them spreader stickers. So they'll actually break that water tension down, make that water spread out and stick to that surface of that plant so that you get better control. So we've looked at this. This is kind of the disease components. If you can keep these three apart, your host, The environment and the pathogen, if you can keep those three apart, you're good to go. You're probably not going to have any problems. But if any peak time, all three of them can come together, and at a perfect storm, your disease will occur. The most to the least availability of influence or manipulation. Your host you can control the most because that's your plant. The pathogen and the environment are the two that are harder to control or that you can control. When you are looking at herbaceous plants, management of disease, especially if it's at a vegetable garden, a 3 to 4 year garden rotation schedule is important. Remove or bury all the garden debris in the fall that was infected. Choose disease-resistant cultivars. There's many to choose from anymore, and they will all be on that plant label for you. So remember that plant label gives you all the answers. Especially in vegetable gardens, you see the disease much more than in herbaceous perennials or annuals. You can prevent that rain splash from splashing up onto those plants by using some mulch. There's a lot of inoculant in that soil. When that soil splashes up onto those plants, that's adding that pathogen in there, so you aren't, this way you're controlling it a little bit more. Don't wet that foliage during irrigation if possible. If it isn't possible, water as early as possible. You can prevent, you can use a preventive fungal spray at bloom sometimes. Fungicides are protective, they're not curative. So once you have it, usually not a lot you can do about it. Make sure that you read the label. Sometimes for those preventatives, you have to do a spray program, especially if you're looking at some fruit trees. You'll have to sometimes spray it 3 or 4 times within a season in order to get that protection. Sometimes you'll have to spray something every 7 to 14 days. Sometimes those 7 to 14 days are collapsed if you get any kind of rain. So you can use solarization. We've tried this within our backyard farmer garden. We had a really hard time getting it up to temperature. You need to use clear plastic. You actually need all of the sun's rays to come in and come into the plastic. You don't want it bouncing off. That black plastic would do. It needs to be a thick plastic. You definitely need to water before you install that plastic, and you actually almost have to seal that area off. It's going to be most effective in the midsummer. It does release nutrients from the organic matter, and it does kind of take a while. So something that you can do if you're interested. So that's the end of the herbaceous plants and selection and management. These are your references. These are some plants that you have in your handbook. And then some of the design aspects came from the design portion of the Master Gardener training. Here are some more if you're interested for references. And I just want to thank you for listening and hope you have some questions.